Presiding Officer, on legacy, the Government says we're determined to improve the physical and mental well-being of the people of Scotland. I think that's an absolutely excellent aim to set out with. I'm delighted as a member from the North East of Scotland to be speaking in this debate, despite Hamzala Malik's suggestion that it's really nothing to do with me and only to do with Glasgow. Glasgow is to be commended, of course, for bringing this to Scotland. Let me suggest that we need to link inspiration, which will come from the Games, to perspiration, which comes from our pores. We know that lack of exercise kills. The physically active gain 20 to 30% reduced risk of premature death, a 50% reduced risk of major chronic disease, such as coronary heart disease, stroke diseases and cancers. We already know the inspiration's in place. That's what we've been debating this afternoon. And when we see 40,000 people volunteer already for the 15,000 volunteer spaces and more to come, we can see the absolute proof of inspiration. But what we actually need to see is 5.3 million people prepared to perspire as well as to be inspired. When Eric Liddell won gold and bronze in Paris in 1924, he, at that time, inspired a nation. My father, along with huge numbers of other people, cheered him on his return to Scotland. Liddell was an athlete, a missionary, an inspiration. He ran in the 400 metres race because he'd been unable to run in the 100 metres race because the heats were on a Sunday and he would not run on a Sunday. He ran with a quotation from 1 Samuel 2:30 in his hand. Those who honour me, I will honour. And to be selected to run, to jump, to compete for your country is no higher honour. And I'm sure every athlete who comes to Glasgow, who comes to Scotland in 2 years' time, will bear that honour with dignity. Eric Liddell's achievements were something that my father carried with him for the rest of his life. Perhaps that's why he continued as a determined competitor in a physical sport until mother finally persuaded him to retire at the age of 75. A focus on legacy, maybe on physical infrastructure, because that's tangible, visible, accessible, not just in Glasgow, but I'm sure elsewhere across Scotland. But the really important legacy that must flow from these Commonwealth Games is about a change in our people. We have too many in our population who fall into sloth and, at best, spectatorship. Winning medals will assist in inspiring, and we must therefore support our elite athletes. That should not be limited to Olympic and Commonwealth Games sports, but any sport that can raise exercise levels cost-effectively. I have a personal interest in the World Orienteering Championships that are coming to Scotland in 2015. One of my nephews has been world champion on 2 occasions. It's not a sport that any longer gets support for elite athletes from Sport Scotland. As a result, he now lives in Scandinavia. He does not live in Scotland. And it's, of course, a support that requires very little more than open country, a wheen of volunteers, maps for competitors and running shoes. And it's a sport that is engaged in by people from the age of 5 to the age of 100. And it's one of these 5-year-olds that we need to capture for physical exercise and for sport, to move from imagining that you're involved in sport when you simply watch it on satellite TV, move them to active participation. Now, of course, schools are an excellent place to start. I'm pleased to see that the Government intends to build on the London 2012 Get Set Education programme. That's shown a way of creating a network of schools, colleges and other learning providers who can support what we need to do. We need to link young people to schools, to sports clubs. We need to enthuse parents so that they support their youngsters. Now, we've had Commonwealth Games in Scotland before, and others have referred to it, in 1970 and 1986. We can see a pool and a stadium in this city that were built for the Games. For my part, I took up badminton for the very first time after watching that sport in the 1970 Commonwealth Games. And I know that others were similarly inspired to new initiatives. My wife, I hesitate almost to say this, but I noticed a couple of weeks ago, has a legacy from the 1986 Games. She has a pair of 1986 Commonwealth Games socks, which have the symbol of the Games on their ankle. Let's hope all legacies endure as the way that they have. Now, of course, the 1986 Games were singularly ill-starred. The majority of Commonwealth countries boycotted the Games, and, of course, as already referred to, they were supported by that fraudster, Robert Maxwell. So we won't find it terribly hard to do a lot better than we did in 1986, both in terms of the Games, but also in terms of the legacy. I can't really think of very much legacy from 1986. But what the real challenge will be is to try and keep pace with what the 2012 London Olympics did, because that was a huge event that was very successful. But I think all the signs are that we're up for it. Let me make a wee plea to the Minister and all involved that the baton comes to my constituency this time. It didn't for the Olympics. Glasgow 2014 carries the name of Glasgow, but also that of the host country to the four corners of the world. What we now need is to carry the spirit of Glasgow to the four corners of Scotland and inspire to perspire.